All right, we're live.
We're
That was cool.
live.
I like that song. Welcome everybody. That was called "I'm With You." The music little clip that I put to the countdown. It was like "I'm with you," and I was like, oh, "That's uh, perfect for today, bro.
Because I'm with you.
I'm with you. I'm with you. We're here."
We're here.
All right. So this is how we originally got started. Was just you and I talking and forming our themes and things like that. So that's what we're doing today, and we're gonna have some fun. Um, we had a somewhat of a last minute cancellation on our live super guest, but she's going to be here in like 3 weeks, and so that's okay. We're improvising, and so what we are doing here is we are. Well, I guess the title is still Hospitality Honoring Visionaries and People Who Move, right? So, and I always have to welcome our millions of viewers globally. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Uh, I'm Adam Zembruski with Hospiamo. That guy right there is my brother, Matt Zembruski with Agile Game Changers. And we're getting pretty good at this. So I'm going to show off a little bit. So, boom, contact Adam at Adam@hospiamo.com. Boom, contact Matt at agilegamechangers.com. Boom, Hospiamo.com. Oh yeah, we got 75 people that have signed up for the pledge. So we have a hospitality industry impact pledge. And if you're interested, send us a text. Send impact to 704-702-2221. Boom. Join the hospitality leadership revolution. Hospiamo.com/join. And we're going to get started. So check this out. Boom. Bro, you don't even know this, and so we are doing a fun contest today. So, Hospiamo represents the underappreciated, the unsung, the regular person leading hotels, managing restaurants, food service, accommodations, hotels throughout the United States, and so. We also the historically marginalized communities and populations, and the call it the those with barriers to employment, right? So we're going to actually honor one of those heroes. Many of these heroes have offered that opportunity for all of us that we have today. So that's one of my favorite movies that we're going to be discussing, and so the contest is related to that. So what Hospiamo started a couple months ago was it was inspired by this live streaming that we're doing, and also a bit of podcasting, interviewing, and things like that. So people started to ask me. I've interviewed thousands in the hotel industry, right? I've made good decisions, not so good decisions, for ourselves and also for other people. But mostly I got pretty good at it, right? And still there's no absolute science. And I have like 3 or 4 questions that I have been asking every single interviewee for about 20 years almost. And so I don't usually give those out. But if you've been interviewed by me in the past, you've heard them before, and there are no right or wrong answers. And so I got pretty good at it. And so with COVID and everything that happened, I started just interviewing people for like hospitality management companies and hotel management companies just as a favor, because not that it was wrong for people to leave the industry. They had to go find jobs somewhere and find an income during that time. But when they wanted to return, right, what happened was they had a new barrier to employment because they had a gap on their resume. And it really bothers me personally that that is still an issue and still a question on everybody's mind when they're asking questions about, tell me about this gap in your resume. Well, there was a global pandemic. Oh, and then the questions start like, why didn't your company retain you? Like, were you not good enough, and all those kind of things? And it's just ridiculous. And so, I have a unique, somewhat unique, very conversational interviewing style, right? And I really get to the character and of the person, and I allow them to see my character, right? So it doesn't really matter if I represent my company or somebody else's company. I try to get to a bit of their own truth, their own what their motivations are, and things like that. So I started recording them, and management companies started to offer us payments. They wanted to pay for that time because it is incredibly efficient. Schedule a 30-minute interview with Adam, boom, record it, boom, it's theirs. They can do whatever they want with it, and they get information that they would normally need to. And I do a little legwork for them too, a little studying and about their history. So we'll get started. But the contest here, bro, is we are going to be talking about the unsung and the underappreciated movies and books that have, and also the misunderstood, maybe, that have really affected you and I personally, and also in our business and our becoming entrepreneurs and just being, independent in our life and living a good life. And so I'm excited for this. And so I have a book and a movie, and you have a book and a movie. We're going to be talking about each one. I set up some quotes here that we'll go through. And here are the books. Don't read ahead, everybody, but that's okay. It's not a surprise. The contest is anyone out there listening and watching. We have some regular guests, Matt, that make comments like thumbs up and good job and thank you very much for watching and all that kind of stuff. And so, if you're listening and watching, it's easy to do on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn Live here where we're broadcasting. Make a comment of a movie or a TV show, even, or a book that has positively affected your life. Try to keep it something like not a cliche that everyone thinks is effective. Maybe something that's forgotten, or maybe something that you have also forgotten about that you are bringing up. So if you make a comment here, you'll be added into you'll get an entry into a raffle. And then after the show today, my brother and I are going to pick one randomly. And what you win, there's three choices. I tried to make it for everybody. So three options for a recording session here. So for workers, for hiring managers, and then for hospitality entrepreneurs and leaders. So the for workers and leaders seeking jobs or barriers to employment, it'll be a 30-minute interview for me, but it's mostly not really an interview. It's mostly for me to help you interview because of that whole he or she doesn't interview well crap that's still going on today again, or you didn't present well. I'm going to help you build your confidence and get you into a good job within hospitality if you want. And for hiring managers, it's a time saver. Send me one of your best candidates for general manager, director of sales and marketing, and up, even vice president or CEO. I'll spend time with them. I promise you it'll be valuable. And I promise you that I will just send it off to you, and it'll be private. All of this is private. It won't be streamed or anything like that. And then lastly, for hotel managers or leaders, if you feel stuck, if you just want to do something private that you can have, a bit of a role-playing session about trying to move up in your maybe move above property or move into another role or something that you've never tried before. We'll just spend 30 minutes. I'll record it and it'll be yours forever. So, and if nobody makes a comment, that's okay. I will. I have plenty of names of people that I know and love, and I'll pick one of those out of the hat, and we'll do that.
Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to win. Yeah.
You get a car. You get a car.
Right. You get a car. You get some time. You get some time.
All right, bro. So let's jump in. I think. Let me get rid of this thing here. So comment below. Boom. So we're going to talk about the books. Okay, so I'll start.
Yeah, let's start with this one, bro, because I've heard about it. I haven't read it all the way through. but I've heard amazing things about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Why you think this is misunderstood, underappreciated, and why should anybody care about this book? Whether you're a hospitality leader or you're an up and coming entrepreneur or you're somebody else.
Yeah, the thing that so this came out, I want to say about 10 years ago. And the only reason it popped on my radar is because I was reading I like the magazine Fast Company, and Fast Company had it was on the cover, and this is the thing, it didn't have a big thing of Buzz Lightyear on it. It just said Creativity Inc. and it had a picture of Ed Catmull, the author. It's the president of Pixar Animation. And then it said overcoming the unseen forces that stand in the way of true inspiration. All right. So that's what caught me. I didn't even think twice about Buzz Lightyear. I'll get to my opinion about, I think that made people misunderstand this book, and they may not have picked it up because they think it's a story of maybe Buzz Lightyear, maybe Pixar, but really, so I read the excerpt of the article or the book in the magazine, and the stat that they threw out, and I might be getting it wrong off one or two, but in the history of film, Pixar is the only film company to have, it was 14 movies in a row that premiered or I guess premiered at number one.
Wow.
14 movies in a row.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it was like maybe a year before, maybe it was right when I think Let It Snow, Let It Go. Frozen. Or Frozen came out. And so that came out, and I think that was their 14th. It might have been their 12th, 13th, or 14th, but
that was definitely number one.
And back then, Gabe and Eva, the kids, were just about 4 or 5, 6, 7 years old or so, and so we were big into those. But anyways, so I read the article, and the article was all about how this guy Ed Catmull. I'll try to make this concise. It's not a book about Pixar. It's the whole history of Pixar, but it's right here. I found this online. This probably is going to be the best. This is the sketching Scrum Master that I told you about that I found.
Yeah.
Her name is Tanya. I don't know her. I found her. I found this by looking up Creativity Inc. and she's in South Africa. She's also a Scrum Master, bro. It's pretty cool, pretty fascinating.
I'm gonna reach out to her. This is cool. Very, very cool. I love the visuals, and obviously I love Scrum Masters. So I'm gonna have to meet her.
It's very agile. Very agile. The book is very agile because when they talk about creativity, I'm still at this point, but I'm a little bit better. But we in hospitality and hotels, like general managers and like operational managers, housekeeping managers, bartenders, servers, are massively creative. Okay, massively. There are a ton of ideas that go on in the underbelly of those stand-up meetings that we have, and that's a beautiful thing. But a lot of times those ideas that somebody has, this is how I felt probably for the first 10 years of my career. Those ideas that I had, and I'm speaking for probably thousands and thousands of people, rarely go anywhere. Like, how do we make parking better for the guests? Our employees have to pay for parking. Does it have to be like that? And so it just becomes a question and an idea. And then like you say it in a meeting and it's like, that's a great idea. Let me write that down. It just kind of goes nowhere. And then if you have something that is accepted and absorbed, and I know this is not just exclusive to hospitality and hotels, but a lot of times that idea is challenged in a culture that it becomes like combative and conflicting, and it makes the person feel bad for even having that idea.
Yep.
That's my this is fascinating sketch that she put together, and
by the way, was Ed the CEO or what was his role over there?
Sorry, so Ed Catmull, he worked before it was called Pixar. Um, it's called
Before
something
Disney.
else, but he was one of the. This is in the early '70s, so before Star Wars, for example.
Wow, really?
And his job, at whatever his job, they were funded by that the government program to become more digital. Like I think it's called DARPA or something like that. So
Okay, yeah.
he was, I think he's from Stanford, and please forgive me if I'm wrong about some of this stuff. I really do need to reread it, but I think he went to Stanford, and his job was to take his hand and make a 3D image of his hand, essentially,
Wow.
in 1972.
Yeah.
And he his whole teams of people were like responsible for doing that.
Yeah.
That got him and also his team got him introduced to George Lucas. George Lucas ended up again, I don't want to use the wrong words here, but they merged, they partnered, they
They
somehow
work together,
started
yeah.
working together. So they worked on the original Star Wars, that whole team.
Nice.
Making like the X-wing fighters 3D and all that kind of stuff, the lasers coming out. And then later, Steve Jobs actually purchased Pixar.
Yeah.
Pixar, I think, is picture and laser. Okay, so Pixar, and that's all in the book. Steve Jobs ended up buying it, and then it went back to Disney, and then so all these different cultures. And Ed Catmull, I adore him because I am sure that he represents so many people that are technically expert, with software development and things like that, and
Yeah.
really had to learn his way in order to become a leader. And then, so that's I'll stop here on this one, bro. But I'm going to read the how this sketching Scrum Master at sketchingscrummaster.com did this.
Yeah. What did he do? Let's read the key points. So
This is what he did. It's a kind of a circle right here. So it said, put smart, passionate people in a room together and encourage them to be candid. So, bro, when I read this book, that's when I started using candid a lot, because it's all about candid in a room together. It's not just honest, it's being candid and clear. All right. So then he created a brain trust, and he created the format and all the organizational documents for what he called the brain trust, which was a room where they put people in there with the person that had the idea, which is the director of the story that they would eventually write, like Toy Story.
Yeah.
So put them in a room, create a brain trust, and then it says it's not easy. It's not easy isn't the goal. Sorry, you need a lot of trust. And it says like the goal is not easy. The goal is quality.
Yep.
And you need a lot of trust and candor, and for that idea. And then people feel free to share their ideas, opinions, and criticism. Don't be afraid of failure. It's a necessity. It's a necessary to be part of doing something new. And there's a lot of other ones here. And so I think there's one other slide here. So these are some of the quotes, and then we'll move on. So these are the quotes that I scraped from the internet, but blew my mind apart, because each one of these has a concept and like a whole chapter around it. If you don't try to uncover what is unseen and understand its nature, you will be ill prepared to lead. In my experience, creative people discover and realize their visions over time and through dedicated, protracted struggle. And my SWOT, my strengths and weaknesses, bro.
Yeah.
And
that's a big one.
That's a big one for me. Protracted means long time, right? So it's hard to see a vision through, and you got to stay persistent. So, but there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. The new needs friends. And so that describes his brain trust.
Yeah.
So that was where an example would be John Lasseter was the one that was like massively creative. He was like the author and the director of like the first, 5 or 6 Toy Stories and all those, and Cars. And so if you have an idea and that's your baby, and then someone you're in the brain trust, or if you're in a room and somebody's saying that's a great idea, but did you think about this? Like
Right.
immediately the walls go up, right? And so there were rules of that brain trust that's so elegantly described in this book to say you have to put the idea out there and you have to listen because everything is about doing that. The world is often unkind to new talent and new creations, but in the defense and the discovery of the things that are unseen, that's where the beauty lies. And so
Yeah, that's
I
big.
think it's underappreciated, one, because I think they honestly made a mistake by putting Buzz Lightyear on the cover. I
Yep.
think that that is misunderstood. And two, I've been in boardrooms, and I've suggested that we talk about this. I have sent this book to probably about 75 or 80 people over the last, 10 years or so. And it is dismissed because, for whatever reason, the idea of growing creativity,
Hmm.
there's no money in it. You can't underwrite it, and so there's no real estate value to it. It's like love. Like, how do you value love? And so
Yep.
it's a very beautiful book. And so I'm going to spend less time on the other one, but that was, bro, it was just a massively impactful book for me, and it's often either misunderstood and it's totally like not in the conversation around the corporate world.
Yeah, I get passionate about this topic too, bro. And I'll just say real quick, the creativity, like you said, it's unseen, misunderstood. It's hard to put an ROI on it, value, like how much money should we really let people do this? And in my world of Agile and Scrum and the companies that are applying this, which is most companies across the world today, a lot of them have stepped out and said, hey, we're really going to invest in creativity. We're going to invest in our people because they do have good ideas, and we're going to let them. And Google was one of the first ones to do this. I want to say it's like over 10 years ago, but they said, hey, we're going to let all our developers, all our team players, everybody, we're going to give them all Friday, the whole day, to do whatever they want to do to better themselves and to better our product, to better our company, whatever. They just said wide open creativity. Do what you want to do. And a lot of companies do like one day every 2 weeks and things like that today. Now, they're not fully unstructured like Google was back in the day, but I would argue, just as what you're saying here with Creativity Inc., it's a really smart way to go by doing that, because you get a lot of value, because the idea is you're investing in the people, you're investing in their good ideas. You're not just saying, oh, management knows best, so we're going to plan everything perfectly. Everyone's just going to execute like robots. No, invest in the creativity and the human engines of all the people that you have there, and let them do what they want to do because they know best. So anyway, there's a lot of good stuff in the agile world that goes along with this, and it's an important topic, and like you said, misunderstood, underappreciated, but important to keep in there. Just like you said, you can't put a price on love, but humans without love are not in a good place, right? Everyone's
No,
got to
and
go work more, make money, buy a car, buy a house, all this stuff, but the love is there. You can't put a price on it, but you need it in order to fully thrive, right?
you need it. And so, as a company owner, or even as a father, right, you can create mechanisms to ensure that love happens maybe more often or more uh, at a more of an impactful level. The same way that you can create a culture at a company that mechanizes creativity. And
Yes.
one thing is, you just popped in my brain. It was another book is Jim Collins' Good to Great,
Yep.
and he calls it white space. And he said you need to actually schedule on your calendar white space, meaning it's just blank, for yourself to just either do nothing or be creative, and then or just leave it open so that you can maybe have a conversation with a colleague that you haven't talked to in a while. And he said that is when great ideas come up, because you're just taking a shower. That's why everyone says, I got this great idea when I was in the shower or when I was driving. It's like you can't do that if you're always in that structured environment, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Wayne Dyer
Cool.
called that the space between the notes. You can't have music if it's all just eh. You need this gaps, the space between the notes. All music has music, or all music has sound and non-sound, right? And it's
Hmm.
that non-sound that makes the whole thing beautiful, right?
Where'd you get that? Who'd you say that?
Wayne Dyer
Oh,
said
Wayne
that in
Dyer.
one of his books back in the day. He called it the space between the notes. He
Ooh, I
said
like that.
everybody appreciates music, but they don't realize music is sound and quiet, but it's mixed together in various rhythms and beats and stuff, right? And if you think about it, it's not all music's not all sound. There's a lot of gaps in there, right? There's gaps in the singing, there's gaps in instruments, all these different things. So it's.
Are you saying that you want me to start doing a beatbox or sing, or because I
We should do the rest of the theme to Beastie Boys for the rest of the event.
nice. I like it.
But no, let's move on to the next one because I know we got more to cover and good
Bro,
things.
this is yours, man. This is something I'll just say real quick. You and I spent some time at we became enlightened warriors with T. Harv Eker up in the Rocky Mountains of Canada. That'll be 20 years ago next year, and we actually had to become enlightened warriors. If you don't pass that camp, you can't call yourself one. And so that was my entry into that world. And then I know that Dan Millman himself has been very impactful for you in this book. When you said, read it, I not only read it, I got the audio book, and I was doing a lot of drive time travel when I was a regional in the hotel industry, 3 hours up, 3 hours back. And man, I had this thing on loop. And it's awesome. It is ingrained in here. So how was this life changing for you?
Yeah, this is one of
And
the
also,
ones.
I'm sorry, but and how is it that not everyone even knows this? Because it doesn't come up in a lot of. They did make a movie about it, and I'll share my thoughts about the movie, but not a lot of people are even aware of it. So tell us.
Yeah, I was gonna start with that misunderstood and more so underappreciated because people aren't aware of it, like you're saying, bro. I was first exposed to this around that time. I guess it's about 20 years ago or so, and I had when I first heard about this book, what I heard was, oh, this was a huge book in like the 70s or whatever. It helped everybody with like it was like the #1 psychology bestseller out there for personal growth and spiritual development and all these things. And apparently it was a big hit back when it came out. And I had the good fortune to I don't know if I met him and shook his hand, but I went to one of his small events locally here in the Boston area. And again, I don't remember if we exchanged words, but I saw him at the event, and he's in his 70s now, still amazing, fit, and doing great stuff. But one thing he shared in the front of the room about this book is he said, yes, this is based on my real life, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. He said, but at the time the book was written, we took liberties to make it into a book, to make it an enjoyable book. It's not just my autobiography, right? But we took liberties. So we made it into a good story as a book. And then when it became a movie, it morphed again. So just so everybody knows, yes, it's a true story, but it was made into a story as a book. And then it was made into an even simplified story to make it into a movie. Because a movie, you don't have a book, you can get a lot more done with words. So I heard about this like 20 years ago, and I said, why haven't I heard about this before? Because, again, it's an older book. It gained some new popularity when it was actually released as a movie, and it came back. But about 10 years before it was released as a movie, I heard about it, and I got introduced to it through one of my best friends now, who's he still is a fitness trainer. But one of my best friends, Andy Block is his name. And he said, I remember I was like, oh, I just heard about this book. I'm going to get it on Audible, and I think it's pretty good. What do you think about it? And he was literally, I remember he was sitting down at a desk, and fitness trainers usually never sitting down, but he was planning something. He was like running a whole studio at the time. So it was off hours. He was sitting down, and it was early in our friendship. And I remember he said, and I said, oh, have you heard of The Peaceful Warrior? I said, I just started listening to this on Audible. I said, it's pretty good. He says, that book is my Bible. He says, I read that book every year. I read it again and I take more from it. So when he said that, it hit me right between the eyes, because this is a person I respect a lot for the way he operates and the way he lives and all this and what he's done. And when I heard that from him, I said, well, I really got to pay attention. So I got into the audiobook and then the book, and then eventually when the movie came out. So why does that matter? I think it's I think it's underappreciated because people forgot about it. It was a big deal, I think, back in the 70s. But then we all were born and grew up, and then more people were born and grew up, and the book's way in the past, right? So when the movie came out, it got a little bit of a resurgence, but they didn't spend a lot of money on the movie, I'll tell you. Nick Nolte's in the movie, which is great. If you're a big fan of the book, highly recommend the movie. If you have no idea about any of this, don't start with the movie, because they didn't spend a lot of budget on it, and it looks just like a B-rate film if you just start there. But anyway, it's a brilliant book. There's a lot of good takeaways in here. The very short story, and you got some good quotes in here, which is good. I mean, I like this. Made such an impression on me, bro, that when the movie came out, I actually liked this. This will sound funny to our audience and maybe to everybody, but I actually liked the trailer better than the movie. I liked the trailer so much, I downloaded it on my desktop at the time, and this is over 10 years ago, whenever it came out, and just so I could loop it. I could just turn it on and watch it for the 2-minute trailer, and it would get me right in the zone. Like, it spoke to me. I understood the character. I could empathize, and boom, I get right into the zone. And then I could do my work for the day, my workout, whatever. So it was a really good trailer for me to be able to get into that headspace. So that's one tip for people. If you really like a movie and it has a good trailer, put the trailer on one of your bookmarks or something.
A great tip. That's a great tip.
And this is it's a really cool story that blends the what I really like about it, and why it's also I think misunderstood, is because a lot of people, when they don't understand something, they stop trying to understand it, right? Whereas and there's a lot of parts of this book that are going to get you there. Like, you're going to say, oh, like meditation is one thing talked about in this book. And I know you and I got introduced to a lot of things at the same time during this Enlightened Warrior training camp, and meditation was one of them. And if you don't know what meditation is, you're like, oh, I don't need that, I don't understand it, whatever, and you stop. And that was the main character of the book. Dan Millman, when he was in college, he was a world-class Olympian or world-class gymnast who was getting ready to qualify for the Olympics. So he's at that elite level, but he didn't know a lot of the other aspects of life. And so the book is about him and a mentor he meets, which is actually a combination of mentors. They work into one person that they named Socrates. So he meets this gentleman named Socrates, who seems to have these magical powers is the wrong word, but just these magical habits that he has that provide him a way to be younger, more fit, more energy, all these things, and more in control of his emotions and his life. So there's a lot of personal growth, life lessons, and things like that, with maybe habits that you haven't heard of before. Like one thing that's really popular these days. This is it's a muscle massager that a lot of people, they call them massage gun or whatever. But we have 2 or 3 of these in our house right now, and these weren't available 10 years ago, or whatever, right? So someone created them. In the old days, back in Dan Millman's day, one of the things talked about in the book is they say, give yourself a full head-to-toe body massage. And they talk about it in the book. And this sounds very weird, again, misunderstood, but they did it because literally Dan did it to himself. Like, you start with your toes, and you're just pressing the flesh to start to work out. You're working out toxins. You're doing all these things. There's a million benefits to it. But the bottom line is, it used to be hard. You used to have to do it by hand, or you used to have to go pay to get a massage. Now with massage guns, like $25 or whatever, you can have one. And we're all athletes in our house. We're all using this thing every day just to work out like sore muscles. You can put on your thigh, put on your shoulders.
I remember a reference from the book. You just made me remember it. It was I don't remember the conversation, but I think Socrates was telling the main character that he was giving him a massage, or he said, hey, feel your arm or something like that. And then he had a cat,
Yes.
and he said, feel the cat's muscles, and his muscles are just like completely like loose and everything. He goes, that's how every human should be, like a cat. He goes, but it's not, but it can be. And then he went through all this. That was pretty cool. I remember that.
Yeah, and you're right, bro. I think about that all the time. I've used that example probably 100 times with different people in conversation, because Socrates said, if I were to be any animal in the world, I would be a cat, and then he explained why, because of just what you said. And if you think about muscle, like we as humans, we say, oh wow, the person has big muscles or whatever, and they think about these things. You don't need a big muscle unless you need the muscle, right? So what a cat does is a cat has the muscle, but if you touch the cat's, like if you touch your bicep right now, you're going to feel muscle, muscle, muscle. You're going to have to push hard to get to your bone, right? I mean, that's just what it is. You touch a cat, you feel bone everywhere. But
Yeah.
if a cat's getting attacked, boom, it's solid muscle. Like it's
Yeah.
instantly just like solid muscle. So, and again, we're mammals, right? We're the same type of being, so we can be the same way. And anyway, there's a lot of good stuff in the book that goes into that, and you have some good things in here about. There's I won't share with it, but there's a really cool part in the book that bangs that first quote home right there. The journey is what brings us happiness, and a lot of people have heard this before. They think it's very cliche, but if you read the book or listen to the book, and when Dan discovers that what makes that quote part of the book, when he discovers that it's about the journey, not the destination, it's an amazing little story that's in the book that shares it. And if you can picture yourself as Dan, you're going to get it like that. You're going to get it. So it explains a lot of human psychology through stories, through the real life stories of Dan Millman. And that helps a lot. I think it's like it helps you be Dan in the first person, or be as him as you're going through the book. And you'll say, yeah, if I was struggling with that, I wouldn't think meditation could help me, or this could help me, or that. But maybe I should try that. Right. So anyway, there's a lot of good things in the book. Highly recommend it. And
That too, and I agree with you about the whole cliche thing. I think it is taking a quote like this, it's about the journey, it's not the destination. Taking that at face value is completely worthless.
right.
Worthless. It's like, oh yeah, of course it is. Like but if you take it, and you take maybe in your white space a couple hours, and maybe you talk about it like you and I have,
Yep.
you start to remember things, just as in the book. And we didn't really make a rule, but we won't give away stuff on this
Yeah.
show.
We're not going to give
Okay.
it away. No.
But I had a moment, many, many, many moments in my life where I was working really hard for something, and then I won. Right? I got an award, or I got asked to speak, or I got a promotion, and I was like, nice. This
Yeah.
is huge, huge, huge. And then the next day it's like, oh, well, I gotta what sometimes you can fall into a you go from a high to a low,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, that book is fabulous, and so clear and concise about the storytelling of that experience.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. I'll just tell you real quick. The reason why I have the wise man and the farmer, the good, bad, and who knows is that's something from this book that I have shared with probably 100 people. And very quickly, I'll just share. It's in the book, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. But he tells the parable,
Yep.
Socrates does, about and I'm going to butcher it, but a wise man goes to visit a farmer. Or a wise man's talking to a farmer, right? Uh, and goes to visit him, and I guess his best, he's got a team of horses, and his best horse runs off, and the farmer says, "I am so much in trouble. This is horrible. This is horrible. Is my best horse now? I can't do the harvest. I can't do all the things I need to do. He's gone." And the wise man says, "Is it good? Is it bad? Who knows?" And then later on, the horse comes running back from the woods, and comes back, and the horse says, "Yay! Is it good? Is it bad? Who knows?" And then his son is riding the horse and falls and breaks his leg. And his son is a major helper to the farmer. Is it good? Is it bad? Who knows? And then war breaks out, and the army comes and says, hey, we need all the able young men to fight in the army, but he's got a broken leg, and so they can't take him. He goes, oh, thank God they're not taking my son to war. Is it good? Is it bad? Who knows? And I think there's one more. I can't remember what it was. But that's the whole, the whole thing of it's like this attitude and mindset. When you're reading this book, it's just, it brings you into that feeling of like, wow, I really did not look at it like that, where it's just going to get better. Tomorrow is going to happen, and this too shall pass. Or this too might be amazing right now, but that is also going to pass.
Exactly. It's all perspective, bro. Our friend George Zalicki, who I haven't talked to in a long time, but he always used to say a quote, which was a very, very short version maybe of that parable. I don't know where he got it from, Shakespeare or somewhere, I think he said, but he said, two men sat behind prison bars. One saw mud, the other saw stars. So if you think about that, like an outdoor prison, so it's outdoor, you got the prison bars. One's looking down in the mud like, oh man, I'm in prison, can't do anything, I'm in the mud. The other one's looking up at the stars like, wow, getting out of here. There's some good stuff that's going to happen in my life, right? It's all perspective.
Yep.
Like two people watch the same movie, they get different takeaways. So good stuff.
I love it. You're going to continue on. This is a movie that you selected that has blown your mind. Probably has some hidden meanings, and I will tell you that I have not seen it yet. And probably the same reason that most other people haven't seen it is like, it's Mr. Rogers. Okay, I get it. It's all cliche. It's all just like he's going to say life is beautiful, and it's so whatever. And this is how friendly I was. I imagine it's not exactly like that.
It's not like that at all, actually, bro. Yeah. So you and I grew up in a different time, and anyway, we didn't have TV really, I think, at all for a while, and eventually we got TV. Eventually we got cable when we were teenagers or in high school or whatever time frame. But the one thing we knew is that there was this thing called Sesame Street, and there was this thing called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because maybe when we were 8 years old or 9 years old or something, maybe one of our friends talked about it or was there or whatever. Anyway, my point is that there weren't a lot of popular TV shows back then, because that was the beginning of TV in the 70s. And then the 80s, it sort of became bigger. But Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was one of them. And it was a children's show, sort of like a Sesame Street, sort of like there's a lot of cartoons and stuff now, like Elmo and all these different things that are out there. But my concept of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was, because it was a show, and I'd only seen it maybe a handful of times as a kid, but it was like, oh, it's a nice man named Mr. Rogers, and he tells nice stories about people and puppets. He has some puppets and real people and some different stories. So it's storytelling with people and puppets, and there's lessons in there and stuff. So that was my impression of it. And I was like, oh, it's good. Again, as a viewer of a show. So that's what I went into the movie, and I think one of the reasons it's misunderstood and underappreciated is because, like you said, people say, oh, it's Mr. Rogers. We already know who that is, or we don't know or don't care. And, oh, it's a documentary. Oh, great. Documentaries don't get as much unless people are really into the topic, right? So they don't get as many viewers. But I'll tell you, and you and I are both in different industries, bro, but we both put people first. We were born and raised in a household that put people first. And I watched this whole movie all the way through, and everything from my childhood wasn't even in the movie at all. It was literally behind the scenes, Mr. Rogers, as he lived his life. And yes, part of it was doing the production of his show, but it was all behind the scenes. It was him as a person, how he lived his life, how he operated. And when the movie was over, bro, I was speechless. I couldn't even say anything. I was so blown away. And the one word that kept hitting me, like right between the eyes, was empathy. I've never seen a movie where the empathy of an individual to all all humankind and all living creatures and beings was so strong and so pure, almost like a Mother Teresa level of connection with the world and caring for the world and acceptance of the world. So empathy was the first word that hit me. And I said, wow, this totally applies to my industry, because when we're working with Scrum Masters and Agile leaders and different corporate leaders, executives, you really need to have empathy for the people you're working with, right? To understand who they are, what's happening in the day, in the moment. If someone's about to have a child and it's their first child, they're probably going to be a little distracted from work, right? That's empathy, that's understanding. But then when you factor in the next two words that keyed in for me on this movie was diversity and inclusion, which I know have become more mainstream in the last several years. But Mr. Rogers, way before it was cool to be empathetic and way before it was cool to have diversity and inclusion, he was that, and he was all accepting. And there's a lot of examples in the movie where and the other thing that was amazing about this movie, so if you put yourself in his shoes and watch this movie and ask yourself all throughout the movie, if I needed to or felt it was the right thing to do, could I act like he acted in that moment? Because I'll tell you, it's eye-opening when you do this. And we all work with people, right? We all work with people. So, and he works with people too, right? He worked with people. So I challenge the people who are viewing this to check out the movie and look at some of the scenes in the movie and say, wow, could I act like that when I'm around people like that? And he would
that's a great way to watch a movie with that kind of intention. Yeah, right.
That way you have that intention, then you go forward, then you appreciate sort of what was going on there, because he was I think still today, he's very misunderstood. I think the movie, he as a person is misunderstood. His approach to everybody and the way he empathizes and just openly loves and accepts everyone around him, I think is brilliant, amazing, and the world needs more of that today. Companies need more of that today. The hospitality industry needs more of that today, right? We all do, because companies are not just these little bricks and mortar. Companies are people, right?
Yeah, companies are people, and bro, he made a show around it, right? I mean, imagine if he never had his show.
Exactly.
He would still live his life the way that he was, this amazingly empathetic person. So when I think of people like that, I'm like, how many of those people do I not know today because they don't have a show, or maybe they don't have a job? Maybe they're at home just hustling around and cooking and trying to, work until the next paycheck, or maybe they're dealing with something that Dan Millman did in the previous book that we just talked about, and their life crashes, right? And they have something going on, and so I don't take it for granted the fact that you and I are together. We're brothers. You're in Boston, I'm in Charlotte, and we're looking at each other, and we have friends, we have family. I'm so I guess appreciative of that. I don't take it for granted the fact that we actually do take an hour every week to do this. And it's for a reason that's a lot more than I hope that what every listener is thinking. And it's for a bigger reason than that. One, I get to spend an hour a week with my brother that I don't normally get to do, right? And so selfishly, that's amazing and life-changing alone. But also we're inviting, this is the first week that we haven't had a guest. And so this is all about recognizing other people. And so it sounds like Mr. Rogers, just did that constantly.
Yeah,
I did scrape something off the internet, and this one really touched me, the quote, and it said, so he said, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You always find people who are helping. And the reason why that touched me is because there's a lot of bad things on the news. The things that the headlines are mostly like, there was a murder, there was a this, and there's little kids watching that. And so if you really think about it, all the time, who do you see when there's something that bad happened? You see a police officer helping. You see a firefighter helping. Even you see a reporter that's reporting on the thing, and they're helping. They're making people aware of it happening. And so that is an amazing his mom was also very smart for saying that and giving that direction. So, yeah, so that's awesome. That's a good one, and I'm gonna watch it. So I'll
That's a good one. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next one, because I know you got a good one here.
we'll move on. I got a good one, and we got about 9 minutes left, and we promised that we would get done in about 2 minutes. So we got 8 minutes, and so I could spend 2 hours talking about how this movie affected me, and how it continues to, and how amazed I was that I had never heard of it, and I didn't know the actual story itself. So this man, Richard Pimentel, never heard of him before. I'll read it. Began his life as a fighter. He fought in Vietnam. And his life's work became fighting for the rights of others. After losing his hearing in Vietnam, so late 60s, right? He overcame his handicap and used his public speaking skills to inspire injured war veterans. Okay. Sure, he did that. And I have to talk about what he actually did through that journey. It's this. And I'll make our faces a little bit smaller here. I'm getting chills right now, even before I even say this. Please, if you're listening to this, watch this movie called The Music Within. Ron Livingston from Office Space, okay,
Yeah.
plays Richard Pimentel. Melissa George plays his wife, and that man, Michael Sheen, I don't know why he doesn't win an Oscar every single year just for playing that role. It's amazing. And these are all real people. So, the American Disabilities Act of 1990 was a massive event for anyone with what we would call a disability. So, deaf, blind, physical, and it happened in 1990. He went to Vietnam, lost his hearing, and then before he went to Vietnam, he was actually a very confident public speaker, but then he couldn't hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was an explosion in Vietnam. He came back and he couldn't, and so he started helping others that were in wheelchairs or having barriers to employment because they were lost an arm in the war or lost their hearing or lost their sight. Oh my God, it's a beautiful movie. But even watching the movie, bro, I didn't read enough of the history of Richard Pimentel, and I don't want to give it away, but it's just this period of sweeping change between the 80s and 90s. It started with him getting discharged honorably, of course, from Vietnam. That's when it started, and then the Americans with Disabilities Act came out in 1990, and just so that you understand the scope of the Americans with Disabilities Act, not you, bro, but people listening. I'm in the hotel business, right? And there's a reason why doors have to be a certain width.
Mm-hmm.
It's because people with wheelchairs couldn't get in, or they couldn't turn around in bathrooms in many public facilities for up until 1990.
Crazy.
And then when they started building and developing, right, then they had to. And that's just 1/10 of 1% of the things that are inside that act. And so the fight, oh my God, the challenge and the sacrifices that man had to go through is all and it's a beautiful love story. It's a beautiful friendship story. And the way that it starts is definitely not how it ends. And it's just a beautiful thing. And so I made a post on LinkedIn before we went live, and I just said, if you're watching, that's great. But if you don't watch, look up Richard Pimentel. Learn about how to find out his email address and just send him a note and just say thanks. That's it. Just if you're listening, anybody, just say thanks. He'll know. Right? This one would not have happened either. And Hospiamo is getting involved in this process. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2015, also massively impactful to the life of people working. And that would not have happened if this amendment didn't happen, and the Telecommunications Act, which has to do with hearing and viewing and seeing with the internet and everything, and that would not have happened here. So it goes all the way back. And disability legislation timeline, it starts in 1800s, but really the period of sweeping change is this dude right here. I'll tell you, man, this guy, unsung. Everyone needs to know his name and cheer it. So last is so again, I could spend 3 hours. Last one here is
bonus round. Bonus round.
The bonus round. So for anyone listening, these are 3 movies that my brother and I, growing up in the 70s and 80s, saw and loved, and we probably saw 50 times each, and we still quote them to this very day.
Nobody knows Time Bandits. I'll give an extra contest entry to anyone who's heard of Time Bandits watching this show.
So back to what you were saying earlier, that we did not grow up with like one channel. I remember the Muppets once in a while. I mean, we didn't have very small.
We watched
small
maybe
homes.
an hour of TV a month or something.
Yeah, and but either mom or dad saved enough money to rent a VCR.
Yeah.
Around 1980, call it 1981 or so, for like 7 days.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 movies. It was On Golden Pond and it was Time Bandits. And it was just on a loop. Obviously, there were no remote controls. And I just remember sitting there. I don't remember anything. Like, I was 6, right?
Yeah.
And but I remember Time Bandits, and I can quote that thing left and right because we watched it so much. And we
watched it again and again and again. It's a goofy, silly movie. I mean, Sean Connery's in it, which is, I forgot, John Cleese.
Yeah, Sean Connery. It's this guy. It's I think from the mind of John Cleese, and like the Faulty Towers,
yes.
And the Monty Python's Flying Circus. Yes, and so exactly. that whole crew. But I will say this is the hitting meaning of it. So when I was starting Hospiamo, I asked you a lot about the intention, and we talked. Another movie that affected us both was the Lord of the Rings trilogy and all that, bro. Yeah. And then I started studying back here the I don't know if you could see it, the hero's journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the John Joseph Campbell's.
Yeah.
It inspired Star Wars. It inspired a lot of great storytelling.
Stories.
And bro, this follows that timeline to a T. The hero's journey, and it's really cool. But anyways, I don't know if this is true, but when I was looking up, it said Lisa Kudrow is tapped to lead in I'm gonna mess up the name, but I know it's popular. Taika Waititi's Time Bandits. So I think it's being remade, and Lisa Kudrow is going to play the lead. I don't know how that's going to work.
That's interesting.
So that's pretty cool. The other one is Better Off Dead. It goes without saying.
Best movies ever
made. Best movie ever made. And then Money Pit is very relevant to everyone's life if you're an adult. And this scene right here, as we remember, he's looking down, and that is at his bottom.
Yeah.
He's had enough, and he completely loses it and starts laughing. So these are 3 great movies that have whatever meaning you want it to have. This man right here is Charles DeMar. If you want to know a character that you've never known before, get to know Charles DeMar, and he'll make you laugh.
Yeah.
So, bro, we are out of time, man. This great was very cool. I loved it. A
lot of stuff from the heart, a lot of important things, some silly things. Hopefully, some of our million viewers got something out of it. And
hey, you know what? If anything, it's the journey, right? We got here by doing this, and I actually had a lot of fun making this.
Yes.
I'm getting pretty good at Canva, so it's about the journey. I'm learning about all that kind of stuff. So, all right, we are going to sign off, bro. I love you, and we are doing this again next week, live, episode number 8. We are speaking with a wonderful, amazing individual who is a Portuguese interpreter,
Yeah.
And that's where I'll leave it at that. And
Yeah,
she's an entrepreneur and an amazing guest that she's going to be. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Love you too, bro. Great stuff today. See everybody next
Great
week.
stuff today. Love everybody. Bye-bye.